of course, our lesson today is about Jacob's dream. He's sent on a journey that I never was sent on. I went on, that is, to find a wife. Nobody sent me on that journey, but he was sent on that journey to find him his wife. And so we have the a stairway to heaven, and then the establishing of a new nation. This is one of several pictures I'll show you that came from Jordan Peterson, who is a philosopher, a modern day philosopher. Our son Jason and his son Ian went to hear him in Atlanta last week. He uses the Bible. I don't know what his claim is in regard to his personal faith, but he is a believer, a seeker. But he uses the Bible, and on a tour that he has now, he calls it Wrestling with God. And if you ever want to be intrigued with a good mental conversation and lecture, he's the guy to go to. John Lennox is another, probably the best apologist for Christian faith that I've ever heard. Irishman. He's debated major atheists, all of the Hitchens, Dawkins, Singer, all of the major atheists he's debated, represented Christian faith in a wonderful way. But from Peterson's lecture, I got several pictures today I think were fascinating. And this one of Jacob on the stone, the pillar, is the one. Our focus is, of course, Genesis 28:10 through 22. Just a reminder, I'm going to show you several maps because I have seen the importance of place, and we'll see that very evident in today's lesson. You remember we started down on the right-hand side at Ur of Chaldees, where Abram and Sarai began their journey, went to Haran, where Terah died, Terah died there, and they stayed there for 10 years when they were supposed to have gone on down to Hebron in that area. So it's today's lesson is from Beersheba up to Haran, but from Dan to Beersheba is the way that generally the Holy Land is spoken of as being the length of it, which is about 150 miles. But I'll show you some other maps. But on the right there, that green line shows you that journey that he made when he set out to go back up to Haran. Again, this is where he begins on the journey. They make their sojourn, they go up to Haran, where they stay for 10 years, and God gets under his bonnet again and says, that's not where you're supposed to go. And he goes all the way back down to Hebron, into that area. And that's where, just below there, we'll see the journey began for Jacob today. But he makes that journey all the way back up to Haran so that he does not marry a Canaanite woman. He goes back to the family. It's like my son Jason and Heather. They were on their honeymoon, and if you've ever seen the kids, they look a lot alike. And everywhere they went, somebody said to them, are y'all brother and sister? And they kept saying, no, we are husband and wife. We just got married. They kept bothering them all the way to Hawaii and back. So finally, we got my daughter-in-law. I finally got tired of it, and she said, yes, we are brother and sister, and we met at a family reunion in Alabama. So that's sort of what we see in this story. Going back to the family, in those days, they married family, and And that's sort of where the journey. But Jacob in our lesson today has a dream. Barry, I could just see you chopping it to bits. You was wanting him to get to Haran so he could see Laban. Well, he got there and he had a nightmare in Haran. When he woke up, he had married the weak eyes, and we'll hear about that later. But anyhow, this is the. Let's just go back to the scope and go back through. Bring ourselves up to date. Last week we had Isaac aging and blind, decides to bless his eldest son Esau before his death. Rebecca, of course, is the fly in the ointment, and she hears his intentions and schemes to have Jacob, her favorite, blessed. And of course, we remember him disguising himself, wearing the skin's clothes, and then getting that blessing. And Jacob presents himself to Esau and receives the blessing that was meant for the eldest son. A moment there was a professor, I forgot his name right now. I'll think of it before I'm finished, who wrote a book entitled The Power to Bless. It's very evident in the things that you see in the Old Testament. His thesis is that every one of us have an enormous power to bless other people. I've read stories after stories of people who have had a significant person in their life to do simple things that bless them. And I hope you keep that in mind wherever you meet people. One of the teachers of the year years ago that we listened to, Guy Downey or something, had a wonderful story about his high school teacher. He said, I could still remember her hand on my shoulder. And the power to bless did not cease from Old Testament days. It has power today. Our tongues can cause a flower to blossom or wilt very easily as we speak, particularly to young children. Just keep that in mind. Esau returned from hunting. He's all enraged because of what took place, and but that blessing could not be taken back. So that brings us up today when Isaac sends Jacob away to find a wife among the relatives, which I've already mentioned. He sets out, remember, going all the way from the bottom at Beersheba, all the way up to Padan Aram, 150 miles. He is to travel back up to Rebecca's family to find his wife. And we'll hear that, I think, next week. On his journey, he rests for the night and dreams of a ladder reaching from earth to heaven with angels ascending and descending upon it. Do you recall another attempt to reach God in the book of Genesis we've already studied? Right. I don't make a lot in this lesson regarding that, but some make a great deal of comparison between man attempting to reach God in the Tower of Babel, and here God is reaching down to man as Jacob dreams that night. God appears to Jacob in the dream, reaffirming the covenant made with Abraham and Isaac, promising land, descendants, and blessings. He wakes up, realizes the significance of the place. In just a moment, I'm going to see in the scripture how important the word place is. And he names it, I don't know how you all were about naming your children, Our oldest almost went home without a name because there was some effort, some problem with trying to find an appropriate name for him. So we had to name him before they let him go. Well, the places are important, and they are especially important once we give them a name. And I have a notion you have some special places that you have named in your life that are very important to you. Okay, Mike's going to join us. Mike, we're glad you're here. I know you had a long way to go, but we understand that. We're glad you're here. And like one pig waiting on another, we waited on you. Good to see you. Good to have you on here. Okay, Jacob makes a vow to God to make that place a sanctuary and to give 1/10 of everything to God. Now that's going to be interesting when we get to that point too. Let's see. My sharing has stopped. Mike, what'd you do, Mike?
I see you, David.
Okay, good. I got to get my screen going back again.
Okay.
It stopped on me.
All right.
You're sounding good.
Yeah, that's everybody feeling this morning.
I think everybody's feeling good. Some of them are not awake, but they look like they're feeling good. They were awake till I started. Just don't know her. And I don't never have minded a man looking at his watch while I was preaching, but it always distressed me when he tapped it on the back of the bench to see if it's still running.
Don't snore. You might wake up the person next to you.
That's right. Well, here are some more of those pictures I found on Peterson's lecture series that I liked very much. And they're famous pictures, but I'm not too much a artist person. But he said,
on the first picture you showed, they were all women.
Were they? Yeah, right. Okay, I'll take your word for it, Art.
Talking about the picture, where you had.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That tells me they picking up right now what the left off.
Okay, he was dreaming, and well, bad dream. It was the stairway. It was a promise made. Gate of heaven recognized. Vows were made, and that vows are interesting to me. I know you think the Indians are coming because there are errors everywhere, but they are there for a purpose. I'll show you shortly. Someone read, what is that first text? Someone read that for me. Yeah, please.
Jacob left for Sheba and went down toward Haran. He reached a certain place and spent the night there because the sun had set. He took one of the stones from the place, put it there at his head, and lay down at that place. And he dreamed. A stairway was set on the ground with its top reaching the sky, and God's angels were going up and down on it.
Okay. We're going to go back. He was dreaming, and again, remembering where he came from. But look here, 3 times in the 11th verse, place is mentioned. He reached a certain place, and he took stones from the place, and he lay down in the place. These place in your life and on a map are important. So, but it becomes more than a place in a few moments when it's given a name. So he dreamed. There were stairways that on the ground. It went all the way to the top with angels coming up and down the stairway. And I'm assuming that is a representation of things, back and forth in relationship to God. But he had a bad dream, so he ought to call this guy. I think he might have given him a bill that would have been a whole lot better if he'd have called him. But I guess all of us have been in places that we felt like we put our head on a rock and dream and sleep. But anyhow, he was dreaming, and the stairway came up, and God was revealing. But God made a promise to Abraham, and it's being revealed. Someone read that particular text for us.
The Lord was standing there beside him, saying, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your offspring the land of which you are lying. Your offspring will be like the dust of the earth. You will spread out toward the west, the east, the north, and the south. All the peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. Look, I am with you. Watch over you wherever you go. I'll bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised.
Okay. The Lord was standing there, and notice the word Lord in capitals. Do you remember what that means? Jehovah or Yahweh, really, is the name of Yahweh, was adding the letters to Jehovah. But that's and if you know any Jews, they will not write the name of God, because the name of God is so sacred. And of course, he is restating his promise to Abraham, and continues to make that everywhere you go is going to be with people of God. But then he says to him, I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go. I will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised. Now, that is I guess we call a unilateral promise. God is not making any conditions. You're going to get this, however you behave, whatever you do. That's when Jacob awoke from his sleep, he said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. He was afraid and said, what an awesome place this is. This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. And then he makes a vow. But the interesting thing about the vow which he makes is that his vow is conditioned, which is a strange thing to happen for him, because when he says, early in the morning, Jacob took the stone that was near his head and set it up as a marker. And he did what was often done, for important people. We remember the oil that was used, olive oil. And we remember that olive oil was used for every purpose, and it was used to offer a blessing, so he poured oil on top of it, and he named that place Bethel. And of course, you have the two names, Beth, which means house, El, which means God, the house of God, and renamed a city in that place. And he made a vow to God. Now, this is, to me, quite interesting. If God will be with me and watch over me, now his condition, if God will do these things during my journey that I'm making, if he provides with me with food, water, and clothing to wear, and if I return safely to my father's family, then the Lord will be my God. This stone that I have set up as a marker will be God's house, and I will give you a tenth of all that you give me. I can imagine God laughing at that. do I need your money? Etc. And we have to recognize that God can do without us. He's going and so he made that is his condition of his vow. But here is how God blesses that family. Look at all the lineage and the whole nation of Israel, the tribes of Israel, and all that come out of that relationship, which we'll learn more about next week. But as I read this and thought about it, I remembered that song we all remember. When I walked through the door, I sensed his presence. I knew this was a place where loved ones abound, where this is a temple of Jehovah God, where Jehovah God abides here. And we are standing in this place on holy ground. And of course, it goes on. That's the song we sing and remember. But also the old song, Back to Bethel, where the true living waters, well, it's not this verse I used to sing, sweetest old story that was ever heard. Back to the joy, life my soul longs to know. Bethel is calling and I must go. Back to Bethel I must go. Back to where the rivers of sweet waters flow. Back to the true life my soul longs to know. Bethel is calling and I must go. And I'm sure that Jacob returned to that place many times. Uh, Again, one of those, well, that's the picture I showed you earlier. What I want you to take home with you is a picture that I showed our Jonah studying, our Jonah group the other day. Picture that I found this week that I think is represented in many of the stories we see in this Old Testament. At the top, that's my plan through life. Did everything just go smooth and straight to the end of life? But then you see God's plan carries us through all kind of ravines, etc. But at the bottom, sometimes God doesn't do things the way we think He should, but God has a perfect plan for your life. Trust God. And I think that is a message for each of us as we remember what God did in the life of Jacob and many of these other characters. Do you have questions or comments that you would like to make?
The top picture looks to me like I'm playing golf. And that second picture is reality.
Yeah, there you go. I like that analogy.
Going in the pond and in.
Yeah, I like that. And the good thing, Art, is that God is watching over you. He's taking you out. He's keeping you out of those holes, protecting you. Not on the golf course.
Right.
His plan may be different on the golf course. Maybe you need to play golf to realize how much you need him. Right. Anybody else?
It's funny because when Abraham sent his chief servant over to Haran or wherever to find a bride for Isaac, and now he had a whole caravan going with him, and now Jacob's going back, but he's going by himself.
And he has a nightmare when he gets there.
Don't give Jacob as much credit at this point as maybe you do, because to me, it looks like until he wrestles with God, that he's not really bought into God and not truly bought into him. So when he gives it, if you do this, if you do this, if you do this, I know you told me, you said you're going to, if you do this, and this, then I will, give you 10%, then I will buy in.
Yeah.
I'm still, just last chapter, he was trying to deceive everybody.
Right. Yeah. It's a microcosm of what I see every day and how I live every day.
Laban's got a plan for him though.
Yeah, he does. And I think you take too much delight in that plan. Sure.
Through the years, I've used this type of thing as an illustration of our journey, our pilgrimage with the Lord. And actually, the book on page 44, a personal study guide, talks about our spiritual pilgrimage, and it talks about a marker. We can do the same thing, draw a straight line, and then we can plot the ups and downs. We go back to our date of birth, then our spiritual birth, the date of our salvation, and then start plotting it.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much just like that, a series of ups and downs. So that was instructed to me, but you emphasized in one of those verses, verse 11, the place. I read a book a number of years ago called A Place for You. It's written by a Swiss psychiatrist, medical doctor. And he said, every one of us are tied to places. We may not verbalize it, we may not think about it, but if you start thinking about it, we tied to a place. And as I have plotted my spiritual pilgrimage, the events that took place in my life, I can tell you the place, and I can tell you some of the stuff. You can too. Mm-hmm. So we all, places are like pegs on a wall, this doctor said. We can go back and we can hang some meat on that peg and say, this happened here at this place. It's a good experience for us. And the value comes in analyzing, okay, why was that a spiritual high in my life? What was going on in my life? What caused that? Why was that a spiritual low? What was causing that? I got carried away with this lesson. I really like the personal application part because it started out with a theme under the title of page 37. God is actively involved in the lives of his people. That's true for you and me today. And I think about experiencing God. The first three realities of experiencing God is this. God is always at work in the world around you. Reality number two is God pursues a continuing love relationship with you, with me, that's real and personal. And then the third one, I'll start with this one. God invites you and me to join him in his work. So we start thinking about our spiritual pilgrimage and what happens in the highs and the lows. And it may look like a God gave. Mine is like that too in life. Art, ups and downs, ups and downs. So this was a very instructive lesson. And then the last point I want to make ties with the lesson that Brother Buddy had. One of the points Brother Buddy has different avenue, but anyway, the same lesson or message came through. And in Philippians, it talks about, for it's God who works in you to will and act according to his good purpose. So it's God, he's the Lord of the harvest. He calls the harvest, we don't. It's God who works in us to get us involved in his life, to get us involved in his work, excuse me. So I really enjoyed this lesson here. So thank you. I would like a copy of that if I could get it.
Sure.
Somehow that I could.
Mike, we're gonna let everybody turn around, let everybody you see all this group and then see you. Let me stop sharing my screen now. Anybody else with a comment or I'll turn around so everybody can see Indiana Jones.
Yeah, do that.
We was glad to have everybody to come, and I want you to see that there are some folks that are here.
Oh, but it's
That's okay.
well, they
Oh,
can see them up there.
how about now?
Oh, yeah.
Picture on.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry I can't operate this under my circumstances. I tell you what, let me just hold this. I think this is need this view.
There we go.
All right, everybody see everybody now?
I think so.
Yeah.
Blurry.
All right, somebody talk so let me see y'all.
No, we're not on.
Okay, I've done all I can do. I can do. Well, it's good to see.
Don't understand.
Oh, yeah.
Before Jacob made that vow about if you would, God had just promised him right before that all that he was going to do. He had made a promise.
Right.
If you do what you say.
Yeah, he said, I'm gonna do these things. You don't have to worry about it. But then he comes back and puts it under conditions. Exactly. Yeah. Good.
Working.
Yeah. So, well, let's have our closing prayer. Father, how grateful we are to be in your presence today and to have this opportunity to be together, and pray now that you bless us as we go our separate ways to live out our life for you. For Christ's sake, I pray. Amen.
Enjoyed it, JW.
And sorry, Mike and Karen, Mike and Jenny didn't get any.
Yeah, I heard you. That's okay.
Maybe y'all some later. Good to see
Huh?
y'all here.
Good to see you.
See you, JW.